The alien fleet had been cruising through the cold, vast nothingness for weeks, their sensors trained on the unknown signal they'd intercepted. It was a subtle hum, faint and elusive, like a whisper barely heard over the backdrop of space. The Council had dismissed it as a fluke at first. Earth was a lost planet, its technology archaic and inconsequential. The fleet had made a routine check of the coordinates. But now, as the signal grew stronger and clearer, something shifted. Something unseen, unheard, deep in the fabric of their carefully constructed arrogance. They didn't know it yet, but they were falling into a trap. "We've arrived, sir," came the voice of a trembling officer, his hands shaking as he adjusted the controls. The leader of the fleet, a towering alien with 6 eyes and skin like polished obsidian, sat silently for a moment, staring at the glowing blue orb before them. Earth. Their mission was clear: to scout, observe, and if necessary, neutralize. It was a simple task, one that would be over before breakfast. But as the fleet slowed, ready to make its final approach, something on the monitor caught their attention, a ripple in the frequency. The signal wasn't just from Earth, it was a call, a deliberate broadcast. The alien leader's face twitched, a rare sign of unease. "What is this?" The response came from the officer, his voice strained. "It's a message, sir. Multiple layers. All languages, all frequencies, ancient and modern." The signal was louder now. The crew's focus sharpened as they realized something deeply unsettling. The message wasn't asking for help. It was a warning. "No," the leader muttered, his voice barely audible. His 6 eyes narrowed, calculating the implications. "They think we're coming for them." The officer looked up in confusion. "What do you mean, sir?" The leader leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving the planet ahead. "They think this is a threat. We've triggered something." Suddenly, the quiet hum of space was broken by a burst of static. The warning message repeated, louder, more urgent now. "They're coming! The Earth will rise! Prepare to engage!" The leader barked, voice tense now. "Activate defensive shields." A hush fell over the ship as they powered up their weapons, only to find the sensors blipping, showing a massive object approaching, cutting through the black. A human ship, and it was on a collision course. "What is this?" the officer gasped, his face draining of color. The ship appeared primitive, clunky, compared to the sleek vessels of the alien fleet. It wasn't even cloaked, yet its trajectory was undeniable. A fleet would not waste such an opportunity. Only one ship. Why? The ship came closer, and the leader's eyes widened with a realization that made his chest tighten. "Turn back! Get us out of here!" But the ship was too close. The signals it emitted were no longer a plea. They were a declaration. The enemy was not what they had expected. They had underestimated Earth. "Brace for impact," the officer muttered, but there was no time for a plan, no time for logic. Only a deep, gnawing dread settling over the ship like a storm. And then, silence. The fleet froze mid-flight as the enormous human warship passed them by, its presence like an invisible force moving through space. It was like the universe itself had stopped, held its breath before allowing them to continue. Did we just get outmaneuvered?" One of the officers whispered, barely daring to speak. The leader's face was set, eyes still wide with disbelief. "That ship wasn't here to attack us," he murmured, his voice low and dangerous. "It's here to show us what we missed." His fingers tapped the control panel, turning on the transmission. "Activate all systems to full power. We're not leaving, not yet." The human ship was still out there. It was waiting for them, and that was before Earth even responded. The hum of the alien fleet vibrated through the cold void, their lights casting a ghostly glow over the sleek black ships that glided like shadows in the dark. The leader stood on the bridge, eyes locked onto the planet below, still digesting the bizarre encounter with the human warship. His mind raced, replaying the fleeting moment when the human ship had passed them. A feeling of dread gnawed at his insides. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. "Increase our speed," he commanded, his voice laced with frustration. "Get us out of this sector. I want a full analysis of that ship immediately." The officer at the console nodded, fingers flying across the controls, but a heavy silence lingered. In the room, the aliens were a race built on pride, on a history of superiority, and yet here they were, caught in a moment of profound unease. They had once looked down on Earth with contempt, dismissing it as a planet of primitive creatures. But now it felt as though the universe had shifted. Earth had become the center of an unspoken, looming threat. "We've lost contact with the fleet," came a voice from the back of the bridge. It was the officer monitoring the long-range communications. He looked up, his face pale. "The message. It's gone. There's no signal. It's as if everything was erased." The leader's heart skipped a beat. "Erased? How? What do you mean?" "I mean, the message, the warning. It's gone. Like it never existed." The leader's fist clenched. "This is impossible." He turned his gaze back to the planet below. His mind raced through the possibilities, none of them comforting. The human ship wasn't just a random anomaly. It was part of something far bigger, something that Earth was hiding, something no one had foreseen. "Send a probe," he ordered. "Find out where that ship went. I want to know its next move." The officer, still trying to process the command, turned back to the controls, but the leader's eyes were already lost in the distant stars. Something about this felt wrong. The very fabric of their understanding had been ripped apart by that single, unexpected encounter. The fleet had been on a mission of reconnaissance, gathering data on planets that had once been considered insignificant. But now, Earth was proving to be anything but. It was a powder keg, a ticking time bomb, and the worst part was that the aliens had no idea how to defuse it. As the minutes stretched into hours, the leader found himself on the edge of his thoughts, pacing back and forth. The crew members exchanged nervous glances, unsure of how to approach the situation. This was no longer a simple scouting mission. There was something more here, something hidden beneath the surface. The officer's voice broke the silence. "Sir, we've found something." The leader turned sharply, his heart racing as the officer flicked through the data. "What is it?" "It's another signal, not from Earth, but it's close, really close." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Another signal? Are you telling me this is a coincidence?" "No, sir. This one's different. It's been active for years, but it's been undetectable until now." The room fell silent as the implications hit the crew. A signal that had been hidden, unseen, but there all along. A signal from where? The leader demanded, his voice rising. "From inside Earth," the officer replied, his voice trembling. A stunned silence filled the room. The leader's mind raced as the realization hit him like a blow to the chest. Earth had been hiding something all along, something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. "How is this possible?" the leader whispered, more to himself than anyone else. The officer's fingers trembled as they scrolled through the data. "It's an old signal, older than anything we've encountered before. It predates our civilization. It's almost as if someone sent it intentionally. And we've been too blind to see it." The leader stepped forward, the weight of the situation crashing down on him. "Prepare a full analysis. We need to know everything. This changes everything." The officer nodded, immediately getting to work. But the leader was already lost in his thoughts. What was Earth hiding, and why had they waited until now to make their move? The alien leader couldn't shake the feeling that they had walked into something much bigger than a simple mission. Earth wasn't just a target. It was a trap, a snare carefully set to catch them. The leader's mind turned back to the human, a warship. They had made the mistake of underestimating it, thinking it was just another relic of a dying civilization. But now he understood. It wasn't just a ship. It was a message, a warning, and it had been sent on purpose. "Activate all scanners," the leader commanded, his voice low and cold. "I want to know everything about this signal, and I want it now." The crew scrambled to carry out his orders, but there was a weight in the air now, a tension that hadn't been there before. This wasn't a simple reconnaissance mission anymore. It was something far more dangerous. The alien leader paced back and forth, the weight of their failure settling heavily on his shoulders. They had been so sure, so certain that Earth was nothing more than a lost, forgotten planet. But they had miscalculated, and now they were staring into the abyss. The planet below, once considered a mere speck in the vastness of the galaxy, was now a threat unlike anything they had ever faced. And it wasn't just the human ship. It was something much older, something buried deep within Earth's history, and as the leader turned back to face the screen, he saw it. The signal was pulsing, stronger now, as if it was aware of their presence. They had triggered something. The question was, would they survive it? The room was thick with tension as the leader stood at the forefront, eyes locked onto the growing pulse of the signal. Something ancient stirred beneath the surface, a force that had been dormant for centuries, waiting for this very moment. The humans had known it was there, and now the aliens were about to learn the price of their ignorance. The leader's breath caught in his chest as the signal intensified, each pulse more urgent than the last. It was a countdown. The realization struck with brutal clarity. Earth wasn't just a warning, it was a trap. And they had walked right into it. The screen before them flickered and then went dark. The last pulse of the signal rang through the ship like a death knell, and in the silence that followed, the alien leader's voice broke through, cold and certain. "Prepare for the worst." The bridge was unnervingly silent, save for the soft hum of the fleet's engines. The leader's mind raced, caught between disbelief and the undeniable weight of the situation. Earth had always been the forgotten corner of the galaxy, a mere blip on the radar of civilizations far more advanced. Yet now, in the span of a few hours, it had become the center of an intergalactic crisis. The crew stood in quiet tension, their eyes fixed on the flickering screens that displayed the faint pulsing signal from the planet below. Each pulse felt like a heartbeat thumping against the air in the control room. The leader could feel the cold sweat on his brow, though his face remained stoic. The signal had changed. It was no longer just a transmission. It was a message, a declaration, something Earth had been holding back for far too long. A terrifying realization sank in. The aliens were not just intruding on a forgotten world. They were stepping into a war they hadn't even known existed. "Status report," the leader growled, his voice sharp. The officer at the console quickly responded, voice trembling slightly. "The signal. It's more than just a warning now. It's a direct communication. We've identified a pattern within the transmission. It's coded." "Coded?" The leader raised an eyebrow. "By whom?" "We think." The officer hesitated before continuing. "It's being transmitted by Earth itself. Not a ship, not a station, but the planet. Earth is sending it." The leader's gaze darkened, his pulse quickening. "What's the message?" "We're still decrypting it, sir, but—" The officer cut himself off as the console beeped urgently. A new line of data appeared. "Wait, we've found something. The signal. It's not just a warning. It's instructions." "Instructions?" The leader's voice dropped to a whisper. "For what?" The officer scanned the data frantically. "We think it's a command to activate a defense system, a planetary defense grid that has been dormant for centuries. And it's been waiting for us. Activate? Are you telling me Earth has had a weapon of this scale for that long?" The leader's heart pounded in his chest. It didn't make sense. How had Earth hidden something like this? And why hadn't they used it before? "We don't know," the officer admitted, his voice tight with fear. But the system is being activated now. I don't think it's meant for us, though. It's a safeguard, a shield for Earth. If we don't get out of here, the leader's thoughts snapped back to the fleet. Earth had been playing a much larger game than they realized, and they were too deep into it now to back out. The signal from the planet wasn't just a message. It was a challenge, a test, a warning that had been lying in wait for centuries. Activated only by their presence. Prepare the fleet for battle, the leader commanded, his voice cold. We're going to need every weapon we have if we want to survive this. The officers scrambled to their stations, flipping switches, tapping buttons, but the atmosphere in the room had changed. There was no more arrogance, no more confidence. The pride of the fleet had been shattered. They were no longer the hunters, they were the prey, and the predator was Earth itself. "Sir," the officer at the rear of the room spoke up, his voice strained. "The fleet? It's not just about us anymore. The defenses are spreading. The signal, it's reaching every corner of the galaxy. Every civilization will know what Earth can do. They're waking up too." The leader's fists clenched. It was worse than he had feared. Earth had been silent for so long, but now, with the activation of this ancient defense system, the entire galaxy would understand that it wasn't a defenseless, forgotten planet. No, Earth was a fortress, a sleeping giant awakening after centuries of dormancy. "Is there any way to block the signal?" the leader demanded, his mind scrambling for a solution. "We've tried," the officer replied. "It's too powerful. It's not something we can jam or shut down. The system is built to keep itself hidden. This wasn't a trap for us alone. It's meant to protect Earth, and now we're just the first ones to trigger it." The words echoed in the leader's mind as the implications unfolded in front of him. Earth had anticipated a future where it would need to defend itself, where it would need to stand against enemies from beyond the stars. And now their silence had turned into an active defense. The galaxy had been warned. Earth was not going to be a victim again. "Can we reach Earth?" The leader's voice was more desperate now, filled with the weight of their situation. "We've tried, sir," the officer answered, "but they're not responding. The planet is locked down. There's no direct communication." The leader cursed under his breath. His mind raced through the options, but there were none left. They had no way of communicating with Earth, and the defensive systems were already in motion. The only choice was to either fight or flee. "Full speed ahead," the leader barked. "We're going to need to get to Earth's outer defenses before that system activates fully. Otherwise, it's game over for all of us." The fleet's engines roared to life, pushing forward with a speed that belied their size. But as they moved deeper into the unknown, something ominous hung in the air, a sense of impending doom. The leader's thoughts were scattered. He had made many decisions in his life, but this was different. This wasn't about winning or losing. This was about survival. And Earth, once thought insignificant, had just rewritten the rules of the game. They were no longer in control, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The fleet had moved in, closer to Earth's atmosphere than they had ever been, but the tension in the control room was palpable. The alien leader stood at the forefront, eyes narrowed, staring at the projection of Earth growing larger on the screen. Time was running out, and the clock was ticking with every passing second. Behind him, the crew worked frantically, trying to adjust to the changing situation. The once serene space around them had now become a web of shifting energies and invisible forces. Earth had transformed from a forgotten world into the most dangerous battlefield in the galaxy. "Status report." The leader barked, his voice sharp with urgency. The officer manning the communications panel spoke in a shaky voice. "The defensive grid is almost fully active, sir. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered. The whole planet seems to resonating with energy." "Energy?" the leader repeated, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean by that?" "It's difficult to explain," the officer replied, his fingers trembling as he manipulated the console. It's like the planet itself is alive. The signal is no longer just a transmission. It's a force. The leader's mind raced. The ancient defense system they had triggered was not just a safeguard. It was more like an ancient sentient mechanism reacting to the presence of the fleet. Earth had been preparing for this moment for millennia, and now that it had arrived, the full scope of what they were facing was becoming clear. "Activate the cloaking systems," the leader ordered, his voice growing colder. "We need to approach, undetected." But before the officer could respond, the entire ship shuddered violently, sending a ripple of shock through the crew. The systems began to flicker, and the lights in the room dimmed, only to brighten again. The leader's eyes shot to the front window of the bridge. Below, Earth glowed with an eerie light, as though the planet itself had come alive in response to their intrusion. "This isn't cloaking, it's something else," the officer said, panic creeping into his voice. Suddenly, a harsh alarm blared. Across the ship, the vibrations intensified, shaking the very foundation of the vessel. The fleet was no longer in control. The invisible force Earth had unleashed had gripped them, and they were being pulled in. "What's happening?" the leader demanded, his grip tightening on the console in front of him. We've lost power. The engines, they're not responding," the officer yelled, his voice rising with panic. "It's like we've been trapped in the planet's a gravity well." The leader's mind raced as he grasped the reality of the situation. Earth had turned the tables. The human race had known they were coming. They had prepared. And now, with the full force of Earth's ancient defenses at work, the fleet was caught in a trap with no way out. "No escape," the leader muttered under his breath. "We are caught in their grip." The screens flickered again, and then a new message flashed on the central display. It was a signal, a visual broadcast that played across every ship's monitor. The footage showed Earth's surface, a stark contrast to the once barren landscape the fleet had expected. Giant structures that seemed to be woven from the very fabric of the planet itself stood tall, glowing with an unnatural energy. And in the sky, visible to all, was a single human ship, a massive warship that hovered effortlessly, as though it were the very heart of the defensive system. The message was brief but chilling. "You have been warned. Earth does not kneel. This is not your domain." The words echoed through the bridge as the realization hit the fleet. Earth had not only created a defense mechanism, they had created a civilization that had evolved beyond the need for outside intervention. Earth no longer needed to fight for survival. It had transcended the concept of war. "We've miscalculated," the leader said, his voice hollow. "We assumed they were weak." In that moment, the alien fleet felt the weight of their arrogance. For so long they had believed that the IG galaxy was theirs to conquer, that no world was beyond their reach, but Earth had shown them that they were wrong. They had underestimated the very planet they had once thought insignificant. A flash of light erupted from the surface of the planet. The energy field surrounding Earth intensified, and the fleet's shields flared with a bright, violent burst. But it was not enough. The force of the attack was too much. The ships buckled, the hulls creaking under the strain, and the alien leader's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. The fleet's weapon systems had been disabled. The ships were rendered immobile, floating helplessly in Earth's grasp. The hum of the engines died away, and the oppressive silence filled the room. "We're done," the officer muttered, staring at the dead monitors. The leader's gaze shifted, and for the first time he felt the weight of his failure. He had led them here, into this trap, and now there was no way out. "Tell the fleet to stand down," the leader said, his voice barely a whisper. "We have no choice." As the fleet came to a halt, suspended above Earth's surface, the alien leader looked out into the vast expanse of space. The galaxy was silent now, holding its breath. The once proud fleet had been defeated, not by force, but by Earth's simple, overwhelming power. The message had been sent. Earth was not just a world of survival, it was a world that had learned to thrive, a world that had built itself into an indomitable force, waiting for the day it would rise again, and that day had come. As the alien fleet hung in space, defeated and powerless, the leader understood the depth of Earth's message. This was no longer about conquest, this was about a new order. A new power had risen, and humanity, with its primitive logic and ancient systems, had just rewritten the rules of the galaxy. The fleet would return to their home, battered and broken, carrying with them a single undeniable truth. Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored. It was a force to be reckoned with, and it had made its mark on the universe. And as the alien leader stared out at the glowing planet, the last words of the message echoed in his mind. "We are not your prey. We are Earth." And the fleet knew, with certainty, that they had made the greatest mistake of their lives.